Hello, as you can see, here is the triple dashboard of my own e-commerce brand, and we've done over 5 million euros in the last 365 days and 1.3 million euros in profit. I can refresh it, this is all real, and I've done it all with the e-commerce brand called Ecom. As you can see here, this is the website. This is a nice picture of here of my mother, myself, and my brother. Like, we founded this brand together, and in this video, I will explain you our strategies behind achieving amazing numbers like this, and mostly about achieving this profit. Because in this video, I'll talk about what really the most important metric is to track in your performance. Because actually, a lot of people always talk about NCPA or about ROAS or NC ROAS. But one metric is even more important, and that is called basically incremental NCPA. That is really the most important metric. So let's get right into the video and I'll explain what it exactly means. But also, before we get into it, like, just a quick note, I have a free e-commerce community with literally lots of value and information people charge thousands for. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Just check the link in the description and I'm sure you'll love it. So let's get right into the video. So first of all, like, I've already explained this previously, but it's very important to understand the following. And that is that this is how much you're spending on advertising. This is the amount of sales you're getting. And the more you spend, the less efficient your ads will be. And why? Because the more you spend, like, the more budget you're forcing through Meta, the bigger the group of people they have to find. So that means that they need to go, like, if they're only in the small, or if they only have to look for a small group of people, they are going to the warmest people, the people that are most ready to buy. But if you don't tell them, no, Facebook, find 1,000 potential customers for me, but you tell them find 100,000, then they need to spread out, and then they need to go to people who are maybe less willing to buy as well. And that's why you see that as you spend more, your performance will drastically drop. And in this video, I'll show you with some math examples how you need to take a look at this. So first of all, for this example, we'll calculate everything with an average order value of around 60 euros. Then also we will use a gross margin of 60%. So with gross margin, I mean basically after each order, like, if you're not considering like your fixed cost, like your Shopify subscription, your team, but also not your advertising spend, but just like all your costs, like, which are variable with every sale you make, how much is left over. So for this, I deduct from the revenue, I basically deduct the VAT, the transaction fees. So like usually around 2% VAT. So in most European countries is around 20%. Your shipping rates, your cost of goods, and also your expected returns. Like, the expected returns is a metric that a lot of people don't subtract. So it's very important to subtract that one as well, because of course you know that if you're going to sell 100 units, probably around maybe 2 people will ask for a refund. So if you're not scamming people and you're giving them a refund if they have the right for it, then you need to already calculate this as a cost, because every order around 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever it is, will get refunded. So you can see that kind of as a cost as well. Everything what's left over is your gross margin. So if we have an AOV of 60 euros, a gross margin of 60%, that means we have a gross margin of 36 euros. So that means that as long as we spend less than 36 euros to acquire a customer, we're making a profit. So let's then start with here. So as I said, as you can see here, let's only focus here on the left side right now. I've kind of showed you how your probably your ad spend versus your NCPA is gonna look like. So let me move this one here. Let's ignore these ones for now. Let's only look at this. So as you can see, like, first you're spending maybe 100 euros, and then, like, this is just some hypothetical numbers, but this kind of shows this relationship. At first you're spending 100 euros and you get an NCPA of 15. Oh, very nice. You're making great profit because you have a gross margin of 36 euros, right? So that's and you only spent 15 euros. So you have a great profit. Then you spend 200, okay, still the same NCPA. Then you kind of double the budget to 400. Okay, you see a slight increase, and then you double it again. It increases more to 20. Then you double it again, it increases more to 24. Then you add another 400 euros in budget. You get 2 euros extra in NCPA, but then you increase another 400. Then you got like 3 euros extra. Like, the more you spend, the less efficient your ads will be. However, like, even though, like, if you would be in this situation, like, you spend 2.4K you made 29 euros in CPA, you are still thinking, you're still making a good profit because you're spending on average 29 euros and you'll have a gross margin of 36 euros. And that seems actually pretty good. Yes, it looks good on paper, but now I will show you something very important. And that is why you should not look at from the perspective of like your overall blended NCPA, but you should look at it from like the incremental perspective. So you need to look at it, okay, how much extra do I spend and how much do I get? How much extra customers do I get? So here I kind of showed you, like for each step, basically you can go from 100 to 200, 200 to 400. This kind of shows you how many additional ad spends that I have. And also, like if you're not working with NCPA, you're working with ROAS or like NC ROAS, it is all the same. Like ROAS is very simply your AOV divided by your NCPA. It's completely the same. However, the metrics just look different, but it's the same principle. But let's continue then. So you can see, okay, to go from 100 to 200, you have 100 in additional ad spend. And how many extra customers do you have? Well, to go from 7 to 13, you might think, why is this 7? Because it should actually be 6. Well, because I rounded all these numbers, So actually all the numbers are not rounded and that's why it's not like exact, but it looks not exact. But in reality, the numbers are really exact. But you can see I only got 7 new customers. And then, okay, what if we go from 2 to 400? Okay, so that's 200 in additional ad spend. How many extra new customers do you get? Oh, that's from 1324, so that's approximately 10 new customers. Okay, then from 400 to 800. How much extra budget is that? Well, that's 400 in extra budget. And then you go from 24 to 40 new customers. So that is 16 new customers. So you can very simply calculate, Okay, not because you don't need to look for like a blended perspective. Already on this ad spend level, you're having this efficiency. So what if I spend even more? This additional amount, how much do I spend on average in this additional amount to acquire a new customer? Because if it's going to be more than your gross margin, you're going to lose money. It's very simple. The incremental NCPA is just very simply looking at how much extra did you spend in ads versus how much extra new customers did you acquire. And then you just divide the two. And then you can see how it's ever growing. So 15, 19, 24, 30. And as you see, our gross margin is 36 euros. So this means that if we spend more than 36 euros to acquire new customers, we are losing money. So you can see that even in this scenario already, if we would increase our budget from 1600 to 2K, that means we would get 400 euros in extra ad spend, but only 10 new customers. That would mean we would have an average NCPA of 39 incremental NCPA of 39 euros. That means basically we would lose money on these additional new customers we will acquire. But this is kind of what's shown. So, and the more we spend, the more we're losing money on the extra. Like if you can see, if you would increase your budget from 3.2 to 3.6, we would spend like over 120 euros per new customer. So until which point do you want to increase your ad spend, can you think then? Well, you want to increase your ad spend until the point where each additional customer is bringing you extra profit. So that means that your incremental NCPA for this extra ad spend is basically below your gross margin. And as you can see here, that is basically this point. If we go into this increase from 1.6 to 2K, you can see it's already, we are losing money on these extra 10 new customers which you acquire. So this is actually the great point. So what you should be spending is 1.6k euros. However, as I said, like here, 2.4k with a 29 NCPA seemed actually pretty good because your gross margin is 36. But you can see this incremental NCPA of these last 16 customers, basically, you're basically losing money on them. So better you could have spent less and then you would have made more profit overall. Because let's compare the two. Let's compare, for example, this example, which seems good. Like so, we can this example and this example. Let's compare the two. So as you can see, at a 1600 euro ad spend, you would have a revenue of 4k. Because how do you calculate, how do I get the revenue out of nowhere? Well, that's very simple because I know the total new customers which I've gotten, because that is very simply your ad spend divided by your NCPA. And we know the average order value. So we just calculate, if you just multiply the amount of new customers with the average order value, you got the revenue. As you can see, it is just 67 times 60. So in this scenario, we got 4k in revenue. And in this scenario, we got, as you can see, so we got 4k in revenue. And in this scenario, we got almost 5k in revenue. So, this one looks more sexy, like more revenue, you have better Shopify screenshots, but we are here to make profit. So if you then actually calculate, like, what is your profit? So we know our revenue, we know how many new customers we acquired, we know our gross margin, and we also know how much we spent on ads. So if we then deduct how much profit was left over. So what's the contribution margin? Well, actually, we make more revenue, but we would have made more profit if we just done less in revenue. So you can see that it is 800 euros instead of 580 euros. So that's what I said, because on the last group part of customers, you're basically just wasting money. So even over say, I want to break even, but because breaking even means you probably spent around until this point, because your gross margin is 36. So here will be your NCPA will be 35 euros. But that breaking even doesn't mean that you're breaking even on all customers. That means that you're making profit until this group of customers, and then you're just losing money on this entire group of customers which you're acquiring. So you would be better off by just spending less and making more profit in the end. Because that would mean you make 90 euros, but you could also just spend less and make 800 euros in profit. And that means less sexy screenshot with big revenue numbers. However, more profit in the bank. And if you find it very tough, to really calculate things like this, then just trust me. You're going to reach this point when you're going to make your contribution margin on average between 20 to 15%. That's probably going to be around your optimal point too, profit-wise. Just trust me on that. I'm very sure. And otherwise, you can just experiment. You can just increase your ad spend, see what happens with your profits. Or just also, don't be afraid. Literally, just try to decrease your ad spend. If you're doing 3K in revenue, and you're spending 1K a day, try to decrease your ad spend to 700, and maybe you'll do 2.3K in revenue and see what happens to your profit. Does your profit increase or decrease? So yeah, again, what you read, you don't need to only think about your NCPA, but think about what does my additional ad spend, which I give, what efficiency do I have with that? Because if you're losing money on your additional ad spend, which is basically your incremental NCPA, it means you're just burning money. So because as I said, your ads are going to be less efficient the more you spend. So the curve looks like this. The more you spend, the less your sales are going to grow. So I hope this was clear, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So if you have any other idea, please let me know in the comments, like and subscribe as well. And yeah, also, as I said previously in the video, I have a free school community where I literally share everything I share. So much information for free. This is literally what people charge thousands for. Just check the link in the description. I'm sure you'll love it. And I see you all in the next video.